This device might look like a brand new Game Boy, but it's actually not made by Nintendo. This is the Anbernic RG280V, and what it is a super powerful pocket emulation console that can play all of your favorite games from not only the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, but also from home consoles like the NES, SNES, Sega Mega Drive, or hell, even the PlayStation 1. This device is truly baffling. So let's take a closer look at it. The looks of it are clearly inspired by not only the Game Boy Micro, but also the Famicom, which is the Japanese name for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And in my opinion, it looks stunning. The build quality on this thing is also exquisite. This really does feel like a device that was made by Nintendo. The plastic is solid, it's not hollow, nothing rattles. It's just a pleasure to use. And yeah, I am absolutely in love with this device. I got it for just $70, which is not much, considering that it can play like legitimately thousands of games. So let's check out the input options. So yeah, when looking at the buttons, they feel just like the real thing. You've got a very mushy D-pad with a lot of travel, just like you had on a Game Boy or like on the NES gamepad. It's truly amazing. You've got 4 buttons that are also just like the D-pad, extremely mushy and extremely faithful to the original Nintendo design. They really do feel just like the buttons on the Game Boy Advance. It takes me back to the childhood just pressing those. They are wonderful. I would say they are much better than something like an Xbox controller. And yeah, on the top you've also got 2 shoulder buttons, L1, R1, L2, R2. So all of the input options you're going to need for all of your games up to the PS1 are covered, right? You've also got the start and select button on the front. On the left you've got the volume rocker, and not 1 but 2 micro SD cards. One of them can hold the system and the other holds your games. So you can use just a tiny 16 gig card for the system, and then a bigger 32 or 64 gigabyte card for your games, depending on how much of them you want to load. On the top, you've got a headphone jack, which I really would prefer to be on the bottom, and a USB-C port, thankfully. On the right, you've got the power and reset buttons, and on the bottom, there's nothing, just a place for a lanyard if you're inclined to use one. And yeah, when it comes to the build quality, there's absolutely nothing bad you can say about this device. It's built like a tank, and it's extremely satisfying to use despite the small size. About the only thing I could reasonably complain about is that small size, because this device is tiny, right? So playing on it for more than 45 minutes or an hour gets pretty cramped. But to be honest, I don't think this is the device you're going to be playing for multiple hours. And for like a half-hour session when you're just waiting on the train, that is perfect. I absolutely adore it because it's so small. I can just put it in a case that can also hold like a pair of earphones, so I'm always set, and just throw it in a bag and play games wherever the hell I want. That's great, actually. Yeah, on the front you've got a 2.8 inch screen. This screen has a resolution of 320 by 480, but the vertical pixels are like half the height, so I'm just gonna call it a 240p display, which is not the sharpest in the world. And that's about the only complaint I have, because when you scroll through the UI, it does look a bit pixelated and like grainy. But when you get into the games, this really does not matter, because this is still a higher resolution than any of the consoles that this emulates actually had. So in games, this looks wonderful. The screen has a 4:3 aspect ratio, so it's absolutely perfect for home systems like the NES, SNES, or Sega, but it also does a fantastic job with Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. The scaling does not look weird on it. Yeah, actually, let's just get into how it feels to use the device, and the emulation performance. So when it comes to the software, the stock software on it was quite bad, so I just installed a Linux-based operating system called the Adam Image. I'll link it in the description below. There's a fantastic tutorial by a fellow YouTuber called Russ, called Retro Game Corps. That's what his channel is called, and his name is Russ. That's a bit of a brain fart by me, and that's fine. But yeah, Russ did an amazing video about how to set up your device. So I'm just parroting of his tutorial. Basically, I did everything that he said, and it works flawlessly. I actually have it set up so that instead of the box art, it shows me the cartridges for all the different games, and that's really cool. It's as simple as just getting all the games you want from the internet, which I unfortunately can't tell you much about because this is dubiously illegal, but you know, you can't really buy those games anymore, and the companies don't make money out of them anymore. So I would say, even though it might not be legal, it's also not an immoral thing to get your ROMs whichever way you want, right? Just search the name of console and ROMs in Google and you'll find them, right? I just can't give you the specific links. But yeah, once I had the device set up, it's as simple as choosing your system, choosing your game, and then you jump in and you play. I have it set up so all the games are rendered in their native aspect ratio. You can set it up so that they're stretched to fill the screen, but it's really not my preferred, so I just keep them in their original aspect ratio, even though it makes the screen a little bit smaller. But this only matters for the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color. All the home systems like the Mega Drive or the SNES look perfect on display. So yeah, let's actually talk about the performance. NES, SNES, Sega Mega Drive, Sega Master System, Game Boy Advance, all of those games run flawlessly. There's no slowdowns, no bugs, no glitches. Yeah, they just run absolutely flawlessly. Atari systems too. I'm actually a big fan of Atari games, and I've been actually playing a ton of like old Atari 2600 games like Midnight Magic, like Demon Attack on this device. It's just because it's so compact, it's awesome to just throw it in your pocket and just play some Demon Attack wherever you can when you have 5 minutes to spare. Absolutely wonderful. I've also been playing a ton of Pokemon, but we'll get to the games later. So yeah, the only systems that are not emulated perfectly, in my experience, are the PlayStation 1 and the Sega 32X. They still run, and all of those games will run perfectly fine, but you have to go into the settings and enable a setting called frame skip, which basically means that if the game would run a bit too slow, it will skip a frame instead of just trying to keep up. And that means that Tekken 3, for example, on the PlayStation 1, which would normally run at like 54 FPS out of 60 on this device, so it will feel a little slow. It runs like a 54 game on a computer instead, which is absolutely fine. You don't really feel any slowdowns compared to a 60 FPS game. So I would say after you enable frame skip, even the 32X and PlayStation 1 games look amazing. Now, this can't really do Nintendo 64, so if that was your childhood system, you'll have to get something more powerful. But for the price and for the size of it, I would say like this does all of the systems I would ever want to play on. So yeah, I'm just flabbergasted at how great this device feels in the hand, how great it is to use it. And yeah, before I send you off, I'll tell you that there are some other competing devices that you might want to consider. Anbernic actually makes a competing device called the RG280V, which has a 3.5-inch screen instead of a 2.8, and actually looks like the original Game Boy, like exactly the same, just smaller. That device is a bit bigger than the 280V. It's about 1.5 times the height and about the same width from what I gather. So if you want something that's a bit more comfortable to play on for longer sessions, but you're okay with sacrificing a little bit of pocketability, then you can choose the Anbernic RG280V. And there is also the elusive Miu Mini that went viral on TikTok last year. That device is pretty much unavailable right now. It's so I'm not really considering recommending it because it's discontinued. You can't buy it new anymore, and used ones go for ridiculous price. I saw it for like $110. That's crazy. And the Miu Mini just plays all the systems that this does in the exact same way. So you don't really get any benefit other than it being like even smaller. So yeah, if you can find a Miu Mini for like $60-$70, by all means go for it. But I would recommend sticking to the 280V instead. Even though it has a worse screen, it's actually a more comfortable experience because it's a bit wider than the Miu Mini, which I prefer. And yeah, Anbernic also makes a ton of other devices. You can go and check their website in the link in the description. This is not an affiliate link, by the way, so don't worry, I'm not getting any money if you purchase anything through this link. I'm just doing it to help you out. They've got a ton of other devices. Their top ones can even play systems like the GameCube and PlayStation 2, although poorly. But yeah, you can buy a device from them called the 353PS that plays the Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast really well for like $90 right now. That's crazy. So yeah, like there is a ton of options to pick, but I picked this one for now because I was just allured by the design, the size, and the build quality. And I have to say, I was not disappointed. It's an absolutely wonderful device for what it is designed to do. Just throw it in your pocket or your bag and, you know, pull it out and play for 15 to 30 minutes whenever you want, right? I've actually been replaying Pokemon Fire Red on it. I've never finished the game. And I'm nowhere close to doing it. That's a very long game, man. But I've been having a lot of fun just pulling it out and playing some Pokemon whenever I have some time. I've also been playing a lot of like original Game Boy games from my childhood, like Tetris and F1 Racing. Very underrated game. Also, just looking through the games list, as I said earlier, I was playing a lot of Atari 2600 games. My favorite ones right now are Demon Attack and Midnight Magic. Midnight Magic especially is like a pinball game that's like surprisingly addictive despite terrible graphics. I've been also playing Asteroids, but for that one I actually prefer the Atari 7800 version just because it has better graphics and slightly better controls. I've been playing the Dracula, what was the name? Castlevania game on the PC Engine CD called Rondo of Blood, which also plays perfectly, by the way. And I've actually finally completed the first Mario Brothers game after like 20 years of trying, so good job me. And yeah, and of course Sonic the Hedgehog. This is my favorite game from the childhood. I was always a Sega kid. I had the Mega Drive, so yeah, replaying it on a pocket device when I used to play it on the TV just still feels fucking amazing, man. So yeah. Anyway, to wrap up the review, because it's getting a little bit long, this device is amazing. And about the only downsides that I noticed are the screen, which is a bit low resolutions in the menus. It doesn't bother me at all in the games, but in the menus it looks quite dated. And what else was there? Actually, I don't think it has any more flaws. Oh yeah, the ergonomics for longer play sessions. That's about it. So for $70, you get a device that can play all of your favorite games from your childhood. Oh, by the way, I also played Tekken 3 a lot on it. Love this game from my childhood. I actually played much more Tekken 5 on the PSP, which this one sadly can't do, so I'm just sticking to Tekken 3. But yeah, it's bonkers how good this thing is. If you feel a sudden rush of nostalgia, I wouldn't blame you if you just went and bought one right now. Yeah. I felt the same. I watched a few videos on YouTube and just straight up ordered one because it's amazing. And I'm actually going to be ordering more of those devices, because when I got this one in my hands and saw like that the quality is actually great, I really got into it, and I ordered like a couple of more handhelds that will be arriving soon. So with all that said, please subscribe to this channel, do all the YouTube things, check out the YouTube shorts or TikTok video that I made about this device too. And I'm bad at social media, just do this stuff and just like fuck off, alright? See ya.